Despite the Spice Girls having disbanded as a full-time music group over 2 decades ago, their cultural and musical legacy still looms large today. And right from the very beginning, when they first emerged on the scene, the term manufactured became synonymous with the group. So was it an apt portrayal of the famous five, or was it just a lazy description? Were the biggest girl band of all time really just a group of manufactured puppets? How did the Spice Girls meet in the first place? Who decided their sound and created their unique identity of 5 individual personalities? And who really was the driving force behind the group? Agents, managers, or a certain outspoken member? So many questions, let's find out. Perhaps the main reason why the Spice Girls were saddled with the tag of being a manufactured act is mostly to do with their inception. The girls formed through an audition for a girl group, the advertisement for which appeared in the stage newspaper in early '94. The auditions were held by father and son music managers Chris and Bob Herbert. According to David Sinclair's book, How the Spice Girls Reinvented Pop Fame, Chris had spent a considerable amount of time developing his concept for a female version of Take That before holding auditions. The young manager was looking for 5 girls with an accessible level of beauty and lots of personality. The group that would become the Spice Girls were formed in March '94 and soon moved in together in a house in Maidenhead to start practicing and rehearsing in their bid for stardom. But dissent within the ranks soon began to emerge. The Herberts wanted the girls to have a uniform look, something they objected to. Their 5 young proteges were also unhappy with the songs they had been given to sing and the management contract they'd been asked to sign. In Geri's autobiography, If Only, she writes that the proposed contract would see the Herberts take 25% of all the group's earnings, and the 5 girls would have no say in their music, marketing or promotion. By early '95, the 5 budding pop stars had left the management team who had put them together in the first place to strike out on their own. It was also around this time that Geri came up with a new name for the band. The 5 girls, previously known as Touch, became Spice. Vicki Beckham wrote about the situation in her 2001 autobiography, Learning to Fly. Anytime I feel sorry for Chris and Bob having missed out on the pop phenomenon for the 90s, I have to remind myself that if they'd had their way, we'd all be dressed the same and one of us would be the lead singer. The Spice Girls were so huge precisely because we didn't do any of that. And Melanie Chisholm, in her 2022 autobiography, Who I Am, wrote about the group's decision to break away from the team who had originally put them together. Of course the Herberts had put us together, but we very quickly established we weren't puppets. We decided not to have a lead singer, we chose what to wear, and we ran away from our managers, so we could be the band we wanted to be. We were across everything from artwork to songwriting, production and choreography. All of it. Manufactured, we were not. Not long after leaving the Herberts in March '95, the Spice Girls found themselves a new manager, by the name of Simon Fuller, who would later become known as the Spice Girls Svengali, and who is of course today a major entertainment mogul, who founded the Pop Idol franchise in the early noughties. But the common belief that Simon Fuller manufactured the Spice Girls still persists to this day, and as we've just discussed, he didn't have the idea for the group, nor did he put them together. The idea that Fuller developed their original image and sound has gained widespread currency over the years, but as Vicki Beckham explained in her autobiography, that simply isn't the case. Received wisdom was that Simon Fuller made us, yet the truth is that we went to him that morning in Battersea, with our first album well underway and the image already in place. Melanie Chisholm writes in her book that by the time they'd met Fuller, they had already written 4 of their biggest hits: Wannabe, Say You'll Be There, To Become One, and Mama. And also at this point in the Spice Girls story, the group had already built an entire team of musical collaborators around them. At a showcase for the group in December '94, Geri had made a contact in the publishing industry by the name of Mark Fox. He in turn introduced the girls to the production duo Absolute, who would go on to co-write and produce some of their biggest hits, including Who Do You Think You Are, Stop, Too Much, and lots of their album tracks. They had also formed a working relationship before meeting Fuller with British songwriter Elliot Kennedy, with whom they had written Say You'll Be There and again a number of album tracks. And whilst nobody can underestimate the role Simon Fuller played in making the group a global phenomenon, it's clear he wasn't involved with them during their embryonic stage. But there is no denying he executed their vision to maximum effect. He didn't really play much of a part in crafting their sound or image, although he almost certainly helped to enhance it. So saying Simon Fuller manufactured the group simply is not true. They gave him the job in spring '95, and less than 3 years later in November '97, they fired him. And the endless accusations of being a manufactured group seem to conveniently ignore the fact that all 5 Spice Girls have writing credits on all their material. Admittedly, I really don't think Geri Halliwell and Vicki Beckham spent endless hours working out chord progressions on their guitars, but there is no denying the girls' personality and creativity is stamped all across their music, something they're rarely given credit for. And if you compare and contrast the work the Spice Girls collaborators such as Elliot Kennedy, Stannard and Rowe and the Absolute Boys did with the girls and the work they did with other acts, you will quickly notice a marked difference with that of the girls. Perhaps not musically, but most definitely in terms of lyrics and song ideas. And when it came to choosing their debut single, the girls met with opposition from Virgin Records and their manager Simon Fuller. Geri writes about that time in her book. Simon announced he didn't think Wannabe should be our first single. Neither did Virgin Records, who wanted us to launch with Love Thing. I knew what the other girls thought. We were agreed on this. I told Simon it was non-negotiable as far as we're concerned. Wannabe is our first single. Geri recounts in her autobiography that Virgin advised the group to go with something more mainstream and less radical to start with. In Melanie C's book, she writes that the girls got their way because their contract stipulated they had creative control. How manufactured can a group be when they have creative control written into their contracts? Whilst the Spice Girls' music could hardly be described as groundbreaking or experimental, people seem to have completely forgotten over the years how brave and unique Wannabe was when it was first released. The girls adopted a pure pop sound at a time when pop was a dirty word, and major pop acts such as Madonna, Kylie and Take That were all trying to move towards more mature material. Lyrics about empowerment and female friendship had been noticeably absent from the charts for years at that point. Wannabe of course starts with Mel B's crazy rap, which is repeated again later in the song as 2 pre-choruses, which is a really unusual song structure to have. The song included a number of weird phrases such as zigga zigga and implored listeners to slam their body down and wind it all around, whatever that even meant. The idea they were manufactured just doesn't chime with so much of their music, which was daring and full of their personalities. The video also proved to be a bone of contention between the girls and their management and record label. In my humble opinion, it seems to have been quickly forgotten how brave and unusual the video for Wannabe was. Again, not the kind of video a corporate manufactured group who are beholden to a record company would make. This one-take, darkly lit video with lots of old people absolutely did not fit in with the kinds of videos being made at the time, at all. In David Sinclair's book On the Girls, A&R man Ashley Newton talks about how Virgin were not at all pleased with the final result. Even the best takes had Geri looking behind her and bumping into a chair. It didn't have this sexy Spanish light we had been promised. In fact, the whole thing had a rather dark, gloomy feel to it. The head of the label at the time, Paul Conroy, also had concerns. There were old people in the video. Would the box find that a bit too threatening? And then we were worried about the bit where they jumped up on the table. Was that too threatening? Had Geri gone too far with the sort of circus outfit that she had almost had on in it? In fact, a number of music industry insiders at the time were of the opinion that the Spice Girls would not work because they were too much and too in your face. The Spice Girls were a group who co-wrote their songs and got to call the shots when it came to choosing their debut single and its accompanying video. These are just not the hallmarks of a manufactured group. And now we come to the group's unofficial spokesperson and leader, Geraldine Estelle Halliwell. By all accounts which document the girls' rise to fame and their success thereafter, Geri was heavily involved in propelling the group forward, right from their early days. In Melanie C's autobiography, she describes Geri as very much a driving force in the success of the Spice Girls. Victoria Beckham says in her autobiography that Geri had more ambition than the rest of them put together. And Chris Herbert in the 2002 documentary Raw Spice had this to say about the role Geri played in the group. Geri was the engine behind the band. She was the rocket. She kept the whole thing moving and everyone focused and motivated. She knew her vision, very streetwise. She knew exactly what she wanted and how it was all going to look. Probably more so than I did at the time. Geri chased up writers, made contacts with Mark Fox and asked him to introduce her to publishers. And perhaps the group's most iconic moment, and definitely one of the most iconic moments of 90s pop culture, was when Geri wore that Union Jack dress at the 97 Brit Awards. It helped propel the group to even greater levels of fame and was key in the building of their brand. So was this pivotal moment in the group's history orchestrated by managers, agents or a record label? No, it was premeditated by the ginger nutter herself. Her words, not mine. 5 days before the awards, I came up with the idea for a Union Jack dress. Look, this is what I want, I told Karen, drawing the design on a piece of paper. I asked Karen to go out and buy a Union Jack flag. Karen then stitched the Union Jack over the top. One of our stylists wasn't convinced it was such a good idea. That's the symbol of the National Front. Just in case, I arranged for a giant peace symbol to be stitched on the back. I wanted to shine a spotlight on Jezza in particular to illustrate that manufactured pop puppets do not usually have this kind of influence within their groups, nor do they tend to show this level of vision or creativity. And I also wanted to highlight how Geri's ingenuity played a key role in what the band became. So as you see, dismissing the girls as manufactured is pretty unfair. The countless writers who have labelled them as such over the years clearly didn't do their research. Dismissing them as pop puppets just smacks of lazy journalism. Those 5 girls decided to be individual characters and to style themselves accordingly. They co-wrote their songs and they were instrumental in the key decisions in making the group what it ultimately became. If they had truly been manufactured, their image and music would have sounded much safer, corporate and lacking in personality. And even their most hardened of detractors couldn't accuse the group of lacking personality. The simple fact of the matter is that the authenticity and chemistry the girls had just could not be manufactured. And don't forget to check out my other video which explores the truth behind the Spice